Good morning, welcome to another running video. I'm recording the audio after the run here. It's Monday the 16th of March 2026 and I'm going to talk a bit about parkrun. I know I talk about that a lot and you probably think I've said everything that could possibly be said about it, but there are some points I'd like to make. About 2 months ago I made a video about parkrun called Parkrun Etiquette, and I talked about general expectations, what the rules and that sort of stuff are. I'm not going to revisit all those things, but if I remember I'll put a link in the description so you can watch that one if you need to. But I wanted to particularly talk about the volunteers. And the first thing to acknowledge is, as anyone who goes to parkrun already knows, if there are no volunteers, there's no parkrun. Some of the roles are mandatory, in other words, a run director, a timekeeper, a finish tokens, barcode scanners. If those people aren't there, there's no parkrun. So you could still turn up at the course and you can run your 5k, but if there's no timekeeper, everyone will get a 59.59. If there's no one to scan the finish tokens, there's no point in handing them out. So the volunteers are essential to the running of parkrun. The run director is required to give a briefing at the start of every event, and pretty much the same briefing every time because the rules are as they are. I think in some cases parkrun may be becoming the victim of its own success, and by that I mean that so many people are turning up to do parkrun now that it's almost inevitable that there are going to be incidents at parkruns where there are lots of runners. I've been to a parkrun in Victoria where there were 29 people, and I thought it was great because the field spread itself out within a couple of 100 metres and everyone was able to run at their own pace without worrying about who was around them or beside them or next to them or anything like that. I've also been to parkrun where there were 600 runners and it was well past the first kilometre before you were able to actually run at your own pace, and the group had worked itself out into single file, so people who were running in front of you that you couldn't get past, there was now room to pass them and so on. So from time to time, the more runners that you have, the greater is the likelihood that something is going to happen. Somebody's going to have a fall, somebody's going to bump somebody, somebody's going to fall over somebody else's legs or grass or something or other. And there's a tendency, I think, when a thing like that happens for people to say, well, something's happened, somebody's to blame and somebody ought to do something about it. Now the fact is that everybody who runs at parkrun runs at their own risk. There is a defib, and the people who are the run director and some other people are trained in its use, but they're not necessarily trained in any other forms of first aid, and they would err on the side of caution. They thought if it was necessary they would probably call an ambulance, and then the person who was injured would deal with all the associated costs and so forth. But as I said, from time to time, the more runners that you get, the more likely it is that something is going to happen, and that something is going to maybe result in somebody being injured or at least hurt. Maybe their pride sometimes, maybe they lose a bit of bark. I was at a parkrun where it starts on grass and we'd hardly run 10 metres, and a gentleman about my age I would have thought, had a fall. Fortunately no one ran over the top of him and stomped him or anything like that, and he got up and he stared daggers at people and then continued with the race or continued with the event. So those sort of things are going to happen, and as I said, we all think when something like that happens, something happened, somebody's to blame and somebody ought to do something. So here's where the volunteers come in. Yes, something happens out on the course, and yes, if you saw it or you were close by and you lent some assistance to a person and got them back on their feet and so on, you should report that to somebody. That doesn't necessarily mean that there's something is going to be done about it, or something can be done about it, and to the best of my knowledge there's no official log kept at the end of each parkrun where somebody has to write down all the incidents that happened and then file it off to parkrun in head office, wherever that is, and they file it away and they look and see how many incidents there are and decide how to change the rules or decide if a particular parkrun is safe. To my knowledge, none of that happens. But so if something does happen at your parkrun where somebody is injured or has a fall or becomes distressed, or there's a problem at a particular point on the course where there's a bit of a bottleneck and people can't get around each other and there's a bit of a jostling for position and people bump into each other and things like that happen, then yes, you should report it. But it's how you report it, how you go about it, that's the important part here. Because if we approach the volunteers in an angry and abusive manner, then two things are going to happen. One is I can pretty well guarantee they're not going to take a lot of notice of you, which is disappointing because maybe there's something in what you have to say and maybe something can be done about it, and that something could be just that the next event the run director reminds everybody about this particular bottleneck and says, look, just be cautious there and wait till you've got around it before you try to pass people. But the second thing that's going to happen is if you approach the volunteers to report the incident and you're angry or stressed or annoyed about it and you become aggressive or abusive, is that eventually the volunteers are going to say to themselves, I don't need this on my Saturday morning, this is not why I come to parkrun, and I don't need this, and they're going to stop coming, and when they stop coming there's going to be no parkrun. So what I'm suggesting is this: if you see an incident at a parkrun where you think it should be reported to the run director or a volunteer, somebody should know about it, then by all means do so. What you should do is wait till the event is over, which means if you finished in 15 minutes, you might have to wait around for 45 minutes, but that's okay, because in the intervening time, the run director, the timekeepers, the barcode scanners, they've all got jobs to do, and people are lining up wanting to get their barcode scanned and get on their way and so on. And so the last thing they want to do is have somebody getting in their ear saying, look, this happened on the course and you've got to do something about it. So wait till the event is over, and then in a calm and pleasant way, just walk up to the run director or a volunteer and say, look, I was out on the course this morning and I saw this happen and I'm a bit concerned that somebody was hurt or it's a bit of a dangerous situation and so on. And if you approach them in a calm and rational manner and tell them what happened, then they will pass it on to the run director, who will make a note of it, a mental note perhaps, and then next week at the run briefing they'll say, look, last week we had an incident where this happened. It was nobody's fault. It just happens to be a thing that happens when there are 600 people running or 500 or 300 or however many there are. And so what I'm asking you to do is when you come to that particular point on the course, be a bit cautious, be careful, maybe just bide your time a moment, and when you get past that bottleneck on the course, you'll be able to pass the people who are in front of you and you'll be able to resume your rhythm and make up for the time that you've lost. So treat the volunteers with respect, give them a round of applause for the fact that they give up their time to make parkrun possible. When you see them on the course, thank them for their efforts, and when you see the tail walker, thanks tail walker, we really appreciate that. If there's a marshal that you'll turn around, thanks marshal, it's lovely to see you here every Saturday morning, really makes my day to see you here at the turnaround point. I know I've got to get some encouragement from you and keep going. It's a lot to say in a mouthful as you're turning around and so on, but you can do it. So give the volunteers what they're due, give them the respect they deserve, approach them politely if there's a problem, and everything will be hunky-dory and things will be fine. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you have a comment, leave it in the appropriate place, and when I become aware of it, I will respond. Catch you in the next running video.